Hello, everyone, and welcome to my August wrap up for what I've read. This is a wrap up for. These are the books I read for my Cat Walk TBR. I did not read all of the books. I will be rolling some over, but let's talk about what I. Sorry, I thought there was a mark there. Let's talk about what I did read and what I rated it and what I thought. One book that I read was, let's see, one of the most most intimidating book was The Prompt. For that one, I selected A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. I'll hold it over here. It looks like there's more space. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. This is by Betty Smith, and this is a classic. This one was originally written in, let's see. Oh, she has other books out. Tomorrow Will Be Better, Maggie Now, Enjoying the Morning. I'm going to have to check those books out. This was originally published. It says a hardcover edition of this book was published in 1943 by Harper and Brothers. So the original date is 1943. So this one we're following Francie, short for Francine, as she grows up basically in poverty in Brooklyn, New York. We're kind of following her from age 5-ish to 17-ish. So it's just her life as she observes things that her parents say, that she kind of starts to figure if she's a favorite child or not, if her brother is favored. It deals with alcoholism, a lot of poverty. There is a part in here that I could see would not be in books that are written today, and I can't remember if it's a jump rope game, but it's a child's game. They're playing it, and you know how sometimes with children they have the poems, but this particular poem tends to make fun of indigenous people or American Indians. I mean, this is set in 1901, so the very early 1900s, so things like that were more commonplace. As wrong as things were, it was more common back then. Thankfully, I've never heard that, but I'm not around a lot of kids, so really any children. But I was intimidated by this because I read this in high school for a book report. I have this highlighted in here, this yellow one is books that's quotes to read for the book report, and then this blue one is words I do not know. That was interesting. There weren't very many yellow highlights. If there were, they have faded because the paper is yellowed, like it does as it ages in books, But there is plenty of words I did not know. When I was a senior in high school, so when I was 17 and reading this, one sentence is, he was 19 and avid for life, and he couldn't understand why he was doomed. So avid. I never knew that. There's also a consumption as a word. What are some other words I didn't know? Satchel. Lamentations. Scrupulously. Some of these words I still struggle with. In lieu of something. Partition. Unabated. And some of the words I now know because I have read so much more. It's not because I looked up the words in the dictionary. Sorry, I dropped my books. Not because I looked up the words in the dictionary. It's because I have read more books. So I have learned what these words have meant through reading books. So I was intimidated because I remember saying that I liked this book, but I didn't know if I said that I liked the book because I actually liked the book because it's been so long, or if I said I liked the book because it was a classic and I thought I had to like the book. Does that make sense? I hope it does. But I gave this 4 stars. I liked it. I even listened to the audiobook along with this. The one thing that bugged me with the audiobook is there were no chapter breaks in the audiobook. They did a little string of music during certain page breaks, like do or whatever, but there were no chapter breaks in that, so it just kept going. And so you're going along going, oh, I'm at the end of a chapter, I'm going to stop, but the book, they'll be so I'm just going to read part of this sentence. It says, almost near where Greenport began. Turn the page and it's Lorimer Street was more refined, just right away into that. So you don't get that chapter break in the audiobook. So be aware of that. Definitely worth listening to as well. The audiobook was good. That was my only issue with the audiobook, was no chapter breaks, and the definite breaks where they had that music was kind of at odd points. Some of the points made sense because there were page breaks. You know how you have the page breaks, like, let me see if I can find one. I probably won't, but okay, like, here's a very small one. So as you can see, it's like you could fit a whole sentence in there. So that would be a spot, or up here, that would be a spot where you would have that music going, that little page break, but no chapter breaks. So again, that was my only issue, but I really enjoyed this. Definitely will reread this again in the future. I loved it, and it was very interesting to see. I mean, you know that women were treated rather poorly. They were treated poorly, more so back then. But to see that, and to see how basically how adults live, and they think that children don't recognize certain things, like certain struggles with the family. Children are smarter than adults think. And this just kind of reiterates that. She picked up on stuff, but wouldn't say it because it's like, she kind of had to analyze it in her old childlike way. So anyway, following Francie, I loved this book. 4 stars, and will definitely reread this. One prompt that I was supposed to read was the longest book on my TBR, which is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. I am about 115 pages into that. That will be continuing over, and that book honestly may take a couple of months to read because it is dense. You have a lot of German and Russian names. You have some French words and stuff like that as well, as this takes place mostly in Russia and Prussia. So it's a little slower going. I tried to find an audiobook, but I couldn't find the same version, and so there were major sentence changes in all of the versions that I found. So I'm just reading it, no audiobook to help me. So it will take me a while to get through. Okay. All right. The next book I read was, for the prompt, Treats, which is basically my choice or a mood read. I chose to read a graphic novel. This is, I would say it's a middle grade because she is in 4th or 5th grade. I can't remember. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. So in the first book, you're following Phoebe, who is this girl here, and she's out skipping rocks, and she skips the rock, hits the unicorn on the head because the unicorn is so mesmerized by her beautiful reflection. So she grants a wish to Phoebe. Phoebe wishes to become the unicorn's best friend, and now you're following their adventures. So, I mean, there's not a major timeline on things. It's just following a child's adventure with a unicorn. It's just really cute and it's entertaining. I mean, there's no plot, I would say. It's just various moments, like playing with toys, a car ride, going to camp. There's not a plot line. So, and I wouldn't really say there's character development either. So if you want a plot and character development, just keep in mind, this is a graphic novel. You're not really going to get any, if much, of those things. But it's really cute. The artwork I love, and obviously it's in color, as you can see. But very cute. And I gave this 5 stars. I absolutely love this. Very easy, very quick read. You can read it in one sitting. I don't know. It's just, sometimes it's just fun and enjoyable to read a book where you don't have to think and try to puzzle things out and figure out any twists or anything like that. So, very relaxing read to me. Okay. My next prompt was, I landed on some laser dots, and that was to read the shortest book on my TBR. So for that one, I selected, I'm going to get this title wrong. It's Frabjous Day, I believe, but it's by Lewis Carrol. It's just a little teeny book here of Penguin Black Book Penguin Classics. If you remember, if you watched the Disney Alice in Wonderland, this is a book of poetry, and one of the poems in here is in Alice in Wonderland. Not the full poem, and it's the scene where the walrus and the carpenter are basically taking the oysters to ultimately eat the oysters. That poem is in here. It's obviously Disney had their creative license or whatever to switch things around a little bit, but that poem's in here, but not the whole poem. It's just a book of poetry. And I understood the poems, but I think what took the rating down, I gave it a 3-star. There's a poem in here that is pages long, and it was like doing the same thing over and over, so I got a little tired of it. If that poem was shorter and was not so repetitive, and it's the last poem in this book that kind of took it down for me, it probably would have been a 4-star. I really did enjoy this, except for that last poem just felt a little too long and too repetitive, but ultimately I enjoyed it. It's a book of classic poetry. The next prompt I landed on for my game was Some Ribbons, which is a most anticipated read. And I've been wanting a reason, well, I could have picked this up at any time, but I've been really wanting to get to this book, which is Women in Science, 50 Fearless Pioneers Who Changed the World. I love this book. Very stunning. This was written and illustrated by Rachel Ignotofsky. I probably said that wrong. But, I mean, it's just what it says. It's 50 women who changed the world of science and changed things. You have some people that discovered things about diabetes, other things about science. So here is Edith Clark. And you have a picture of the woman, okay? So you have a picture of the individual. You have interesting facts along the sides or along the bottom. And then over here is more of a biography kind of thing of how they changed something or discovered something and how they came into their field. So like Edith Clark is an electrical engineer, and it gives you fun little tidbits like she published 18 technical papers in 22 years. She was the first woman to be allowed to share her paper with the American Institute of Electrical Engineers. So you have fun little facts all along the sides of this. Here is Maria Gulpert-Mayer. So again, it's the same thing throughout the book. There are also times when instead of they're talking about a person, they're giving you some interesting facts. I just passed that page. I'm trying to find that so I can show you, because that was interesting too. Like you have a timeline. This one is like 400 AD. Hypata of Alexandria was the first recorded female mathematician. And then it just goes on. And then there's like the 1920 women's, they want to get the right to vote for women. Women more in the workplace during World War II as men go to fight in the war. Things like that. And there's also another one with like the items that people use, like a beaker and microscope and other things like that, a little later on in the book. But this was very, very interesting. There were times I did get a little annoyed about how some of these women were treated. Like you had one woman who found something, and I can't remember her name, and she worked with a man, but hit myself. She worked with a man, but then he went and took everything that she discovered and shared everything and claimed that he's the one that discovered it. But now, several years later, we're finding out that she's actually the one that discovered it, and he just took credit. So you do see things like that. A lot of these women had support from family who loved them dearly and wanted them to chase their dreams, so to speak. So very interesting. I loved this one. I gave this 5 stars, I think. Yeah, 5 stars. And highly recommend this book. Okay, now let's talk about, I have 2 more books to show you, but let's talk about the 2 prompts, because there's a total of 4 prompts. There's 2 prompts I did not get to, and that was A Water Drop, which is another most anticipating read. I chose Mad Alchemist by Net Novel, and that's because I was looking for graphic novels, and when I was looking for graphic novels and manga on Amazon, that came up, but it's not a graphic novel and it's not a manga. So I'm intimidated. There's no description. I have no idea what it's about, so I'm very intimidated by that one. Then I landed on a paw print, which was a prompt card, and I was to read a book that has a troll character in it, or troll monster, whatever you want to say. I chose Unnatural Magic by C.M. Waggoner. Both of these books, Unnatural Magic and Mad Alchemist, I did not get to, so hence why I am took a punishment for the September Cat Walk TBR. So let's move on. The 2 final books I read for the entire month was for the prompt, again, shortest book on the TBR. So the book I selected for, sorry, the phone rang, and it was a scam. The book I selected for the shortest book on my TBR, or the second shortest book, was Call of the Wild by Jack London. I think I'm going to unhaul this book. I gave this one 3 stars. It's very short. I mean, it is 62 pages. I liked reading from the animal's perspective. However, it's the injury and the harm and the mistreatment of the animals that bothered me. So I read it. I used to want to watch the movie. I do not want to watch the movie adaptation of this book. I know there's a movie that's been adapted from this book. I will not watch it now. Not after reading the book. There are times where it does get a little gory, but really not that bad, at least in my opinion. But I do like a lot of gore, so please be aware of that. Grain of salt. Because there are animal fights in this. So there's a warning. But I'm not going to reread this, so I am going to unhaul this. I'll take this to, I'll donate it to the library or to a free little library that's located at various places and stick it in there for someone else to get and hopefully enjoy. But yeah, I'm going to unhaul this because I'm just not going to reread it. I can't deal with the negative aspects that the animals went through. That just hurts my heart way, way too much. I can deal with it with people in a fiction book and be maybe a little sad in certain situations for that character, but not with an animal. I have a very hard time with that. And when that's one of the main reoccurring themes in the book, I just can't reread it. I almost DNF'd it, but I really wanted to finish it, so I forced myself to finish it. I'm glad I read it. It's 3 stars. It's a classic. I thought it was written well from the animal's perspective, but again, I cannot deal with it in the future, so I will unhaul it. And I don't know how many times I've said that, but yeah. Anyway, well, let's move on. The last book that I read was for the another paw print, which was another prompt card, and the prompt card came up with Baba Yaga. So that was to read a book with Baba Yaga in that story. I went with another kind of a comic book. I wouldn't say it's, I don't know if you'd call it a graphic novel, but it's definitely a kind of like a comic book. Baba Yaga's assistant. So I thought this was cute. I gave this 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. Part of why I think I really liked this is that I found out really not that long ago, I want to say a couple months ago, that I have a lot of family ancestry from Russia and from Prussia, and where this is kind of Russian inspired in folklore, like the Baba Yaga. And then you have, obviously, it doesn't mention, I can't remember if it said the word babushka, which is grandma, but Baba Yaga, so Slavic, I don't know, there's something, it just kind of hit home that stories about Baba Yaga might have been very prominently told with my ancestors, I guess. And so it was a little special to me knowing that, because my great-great-grandparents immigrated from Russia, and and they lived, I guess, in an area where it was a lot of Russian immigrants. So their children were fully Russian. So my great-grandma was fully Russian, and she married my great-grandpa, who was also fully Russian and in the same situation. So my grandma is full Russian, obviously born in America because it's generation. So she's basically Russian-American. So my mom would be half Russian, I'd be quarter Russian. But I don't know. I just thought that was very interesting. And so they just had a little bit more of a special meaning. I'm getting a little sappy. I know it. Let's move on. I gave it 5 stars. And I really enjoyed the artwork in there. And you can tell the love of this child's grandmother. And just in this scene of just that love that's conveyed. And stuff that this child learned from her grandma. How she was able to kind of teach these children and adapt what she learned from her grandma into modern day life, so to speak. So very cute. Absolutely loved it. Highly recommend. So these are the books that I read plus the what I'm unhauling for August that I completed. So overall, it's not a lot of reading, but honestly, if you don't read a lot, you really should not beat yourself up. If you're in a slump, you're in a slump. If you're just not that much of an avid reader, that's fine. Any reading is great. So if you ever, I hope no one would ever feel guilty, but if you ever do feel guilty, please know that more people than not, I think, would be okay with whatever you read, and I think that you should too. It's hard to say, and it's definitely one of those things that's easier said than done type of a thing, but any amount of reading is good. And any type of reading, whether you read magazines all the time, graphic novels, comics, mangas, or you read actual novels, or if you read only novellas, that's fine. That is perfectly fine and acceptable. But that's what I read. So until next time. Oh, and in the description box, you will find my social media information. I will try to list these books in the description box, just so that if you're interested, you know the title and the author, so you can go wherever you want to search for these books if you're interested in them at all. So that's pretty much it. And you'll find my social media information if you want to be friends on any of those other platforms as well. I would love to be friends on any of those platforms if you're interested. So check them out if you would like. If not, no worries. So, but until next time, stay true to yourself and enjoy a good book. And I'll talk to you later.